Imagine yourself in a completely quiet place. Not just a place without sound, a place where sound has forgotten its existence. Maybe you're lying on your back, staring at the ceiling. Maybe you're sitting in a chair that's slowly absorbing you. Or maybe you've simply closed your eyes, and the entire world behind them has vanished. Breathe slowly. Don't rush. Your breath is your first step into space. Because space isn't really far away. It's within you. Every cell in your body contains atoms born in the hearts of stars. You are a fragment of the universe that one day woke up and began to think about itself. When you breathe, air enters your lungs, entering as oxygen, born long ago by trees and cyanobacteria. Exiting is carbon dioxide, which will return to the world again to become something new. It's a circle. Everything in life is a circle. The circles of the planet's rotation, the circles of electron orbits, the circles of your thoughts, as they return to the same thing. But now, in this moment, try to simply breathe. Don't analyze your breathing. Don't try to breathe correctly. Just let your body do what it does billions of times a day, without your help.
A rustle in the bushes. Alarm was telling you, beware, there might be danger. Your heart started beating faster. Blood rushed to your muscles. You became more alert, more focused, and that helped you stay alive. But the world has changed. The caves are gone. Apartments and offices have taken their place. Mammoths have been replaced by reports and instant messages. But your body's alarm system? It's still the same. It still prepares you for danger that never comes. It still tells you, you need to be on edge. You need to be prepared. You need to expect the worst. And when does anxiety become constant? When does it not go away with the onset of night, and not let up with the arrival of morning? When does it become the background of your life? The sound you hear even when everything around you is quiet. Then something else begins. Depression is like a solar eclipse. The sun remains there, in the same place, but its light changes. It doesn't disappear completely, but its quality changes. And the world turns gray. Not black, because black is another color. Gray, colorless, empty. People with depression often say the same thing. I feel nothing. And that's the scariest part. Because the absence of pain doesn't mean the absence of suffering. It means the absence of everything. The absence of joy. The absence of interest. The absence of meaning. But call yourself to return here, to this moment, to this breath. Because this story isn't about how bad things can be. It's a story about how our consciousness works, and about how we can help ourselves find the way back.
Imagine a building, a very large building, so large
that you can't see its roof even if you tilt your head back and look very closely. This building is your brain. There are countless rooms in this building. Each room is home to some kind of process. One room processes what you see. Another processes sounds. Another processes smells. Another processes memories. In many rooms, something is happening simultaneously that you're not even aware of. Your heart is beating. Your stomach is digesting food. Your immune system is fighting germs. All of this happens without your awareness, without your participation. And when you enter the building and start climbing the stairs, you notice that some rooms are brighter than others. In the basement of this building lives a very old system. So old, in fact, that it was here even before the conscious part of your mind emerged. It's called the limbic system. Or, more poetically, the ancient brain. In this basement is the brain's amygdala, a structure the size of an almond, hence its name. And in this tiny nut resides all your primal wisdom and primal fear. The amygdala is a watchdog. Its job is to scan the surrounding world for danger. And it's very, very good at its job. Too good. It sees threats everywhere, even where there aren't any. Imagine you're walking down the street. A person passes by. It could be a perfectly harmless person. Maybe they're just rushing to work. Maybe they're minding their own business. But what does your amygdala see? An awkward facial expression, a strange posture, a step too fast, and immediately a warning signal sounds. Danger. Your heart starts beating faster. Adrenaline rushes into your bloodstream. Your muscles tense, preparing to flee or fight. It's called the fight or flight response. And it's completely normal. It's expected. It's natural.
But what happens when this system starts to trigger too often? When it's triggered by things that aren't actually a threat? When it turns on at night when you're trying to sleep? When it turns on when you're checking your email? When it turns on because you're thinking about something that will happen in the future that hasn't happened yet? It's called generalized anxiety. It's when your brain's ancient security system begins to perceive life as one big threat. But let's look further into the building. The prefrontal cortex is located on the upper floors. It's a very young part of the brain. It evolved quite recently. It's responsible for logic, rationality, and planning. It's what allows you to solve math problems, write poetry, think about the future, and analyze the past. When the amygdala fires, when anxiety flares up, the amygdala sends a signal upward. It screams, "Look, there's danger, deal with it." And the prefrontal cortex can handle this information. It can analyze it. It can say, "Stop, this isn't dangerous. This is just a person rushing to work. Calm down." The problem is, this communication doesn't work equally well in both directions. The signal from the amygdala to the cortex is very strong, but the signal from the cortex to the amygdala is much weaker. It's like having a really loud radio on in the basement and trying to drown it out by whispering from upstairs. It's very difficult. This is why logic doesn't help during a panic attack. This is why a person who knows their fears are irrational still can't control them. Because between the ancient system of fear and the new system of logic, there is a vast chasm of mutual misunderstanding.
The path into darkness. Now imagine walking through this building, and you notice that some of the corridors are getting darker and darker. Depression isn't just sadness. Sadness is an emotion. It comes and goes like clouds. Depression is something else. It's as if the lights in the edifice of your mind are fading, room by room.
In one room, the light fades and you stop seeing colors. The world turns gray. In the other room, the light fades and you can no longer see the shapes of objects. Everything becomes blurry. In the third room, the light fades and you lose your sense of purpose. Things that once brought you joy now leave you indifferent. People often describe depression as a void, as an absence, as a deep well with no bottom. And that's a very accurate description, because when you're depressed, you can't see the bottom. You can't see the end. You only see the walls of that well stretching upward, higher and higher, until they disappear into darkness. The biochemistry of depression is highly complex. It's not simply a deficiency of a single chemical, as scientists once thought. It's a complex system of dysregulation.
Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that makes you feel good. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that helps you feel motivated. Norepinephrine is a neurotransmitter that helps you feel energized. When you're depressed, levels of these substances drop, but that's not the end of the story. The receptors these substances act on may also stop functioning properly. Brain inflammation may increase. Neurotrophic factors, substances that help nerve cells survive and grow, may decrease. It's as if the entire city of your mind lost power. And it's not just the light bulbs that are out, but the wires are rusting, the transformers are breaking, and no one can fix the system. But there's something important to remember here. The brain is the most plastic organ in your body. That means it can change, it can regenerate, it can create new neural pathways, even at an age when conventional science said it was impossible. This property is called neuroplasticity, and it is one of the greatest hopes for treating depression.
Spirals of thinking. Let's go back to the building I was talking about. Remember those dark corridors? Now imagine someone turned on a projector in those corridors, and shadows start appearing on the walls. These are your thoughts. And here's the strange thing. When you're anxious or depressed, these thoughts start repeating themselves. They follow the same path over and over again, like a needle stuck in the groove of an old record. I can't handle this. There's something wrong with me. Nobody loves me. I'll screw this up, like always. These thoughts don't just appear. They create neural pathways. Imagine a path in the forest. The more often it's used, the more obvious it becomes. The more obvious it becomes, the more likely the next traveler will follow that path rather than create a new one. The same thing happens in your brain. Every time you think the same thought, you strengthen the neural pathway that produces it. And when you're anxious or depressed, your brain is especially good at creating these pathways. It's called a cognitive distortion. It's not just bad thoughts, it's a systematic distortion of reality by your mind. When you're depressed, your brain sees evidence for negative thoughts everywhere. If you're praised, you think they're just being polite. If you did something well, you think it was just luck. If you did something bad, you think I'm a total loser. This is called confirmation bias. Your brain only sees things that match its beliefs, and when a belief is negative, all of reality begins to seem negative. When you're anxious, your brain catastrophizes. If someone doesn't reply to your message, it means they're angry with you. The friendship will end, and you'll be alone. If you feel a strange sensation in your chest, it means you have heart disease and will die. If you have to give a presentation at work, it means you'll faint. Everyone will laugh at you, and you'll get fired. It's called catastrophic thinking, and it's very, very persuasive. When you're in this state, these scenarios don't seem like assumptions, but rather inevitabilities. But here's the interesting thing. If you were an astronomer observing such a brain from the outside, you would notice that this is simply a misinterpretation of the data. It's not the truth. It's not reality. It's simply a miscalculation. Imagine an astronomer looking at the stars through a distorted telescope. The stars appear in the wrong places. The orbits of the planets appear irregular. The entire map of the sky appears distorted. But this isn't because the stars are actually in the wrong places. It's because the telescope's lens is incorrect. Symptoms that scream. There are so many ways anxiety and depression manifest themselves, and people often don't even realize they're anxious or depressed because the symptoms can be so physical. Have you ever noticed that when you're nervous, your stomach starts to hurt? It's not your imagination, it's real. That's why depression and anxiety are sometimes called illnesses of the whole body, not just the mind. Anxiety can manifest itself as heart palpitations. You feel like your heart is beating too fast, too hard, or irregularly. This can be even more frightening because you start to think something is wrong with your heart. But usually, it's just the adrenaline rush. Shortness of breath. You feel like you can't breathe deeply enough. You start breathing more quickly and shallowly, which actually makes the problem worse because you're inhaling too much oxygen and exhaling too much carbon dioxide, making you even more dizzy. Dizziness, or a feeling of fainting. The world starts spinning. You feel like you're about to fall. But in reality, this is often just hyperventilation, combined with changes in blood pressure.
Sweating. Your body produces sweat even when you're not hot. This is a remnant of an ancient system. When you were preparing to fight a tiger, sweat made your skin more slippery, making it harder for the enemy to hold you down. Nausea. Your stomach is churning. You might feel like you're going to vomit. This is because stress diverts blood from digestion to the muscles. This disrupts your stomach's function. Muscle tension. Your muscles tense in preparation for action. Your back, neck, and jaw may ache. This tension can persist even after the danger has passed because your brain has forgotten to send a signal to relax. Insomnia. Your brain is overactive. It can't switch off. You lie in bed and think about 100 different things. You worry about what will happen tomorrow. You overanalyze what happened today. The clock ticks, but sleep doesn't come. Panic. Sometimes anxiety culminates in a panic attack. This is an extreme form of the fight or flight response. Suddenly, for no apparent reason, or for a reason that's out of proportion to the intensity of the response, you're overcome by a sense of impending doom. You feel like you're dying. All the symptoms of anxiety kick in at full force simultaneously. Depression can manifest itself as loss of interest. Things that used to bring you joy now leave you cold. You don't want to see your friends. You don't want to pursue your hobbies. You don't want to do anything. This is called anhedonia, the inability to experience pleasure. Fatigue. Not just physical fatigue, although that too. You feel drained on a spiritual level. Getting out of bed seems nearly impossible. Even simple tasks require incredible effort. Sleep problems. This could be insomnia, but it could also be the opposite. You're sleeping too much. You might sleep 12, 14, or 16 hours a day, but still feel unrested. Changes in appetite. You either eat nothing or eat constantly. Food becomes either uninteresting or the only source of comfort. Feelings of guilt and worthlessness. You feel guilty about everything, even things that have nothing to do with you. You feel like you're a burden to others, that you'd be better off not existing. Difficulty concentrating. Your mind is clouded. It's hard to think. It's hard to make decisions. Even choosing what to wear can seem impossible. Irritability. Depression often disguises itself as irritability. People around you irritate you. Everything irritates you. You snap at people for no apparent reason. Physical pain. People often don't realize that depression can cause pain. Your back might hurt, your head might ache, your whole body might ache. Thoughts of death. Sometimes thoughts of death arise, not necessarily active suicidal thoughts, but simply thoughts of how nice it would be to never wake up, or thoughts of how other people would be better off without you. Finding help online. People often begin their healing journey not by visiting a doctor, but by searching online. Why can't I sleep at night? Why am I always worried? I have panic attacks. What should I do? Signs of depression in adults. How can I get rid of anxiety on my own? Does cognitive behavioral therapy work? Google is filled with these questions. Millions of people sit in front of their phones at night, searching for answers. And often the first search result is a forum, where some unknown person shares symptoms that sound familiar, all too familiar. This can be comforting, because it means you're not alone, that other people feel the same way. But this can also be dangerous, because the person on the forum could be completely wrong. Their diagnosis could be wrong. Their treatment could be wrong. And now you're following their path, even though it might be the wrong path for you. Internet searches often lead to something even worse, cyberchondria. This is when you search for your symptoms online and convince yourself you have the most terrifying disease. The only result for searching rapid heartbeat might be an article about a rare heart condition, and now you're convinced you're dying.
I know it sounds too simple, too banal. You breathe your whole life. How can breathing help with anxiety? But here's what's interesting. When you're anxious, your breathing becomes rapid and shallow. You breathe from your chest, not your belly. You hyperventilate. But you can turn this against anxiety itself, because the pathway between your body and your mind works both ways. If you breathe slowly, your body sends a signal to your brain. There's no danger. If there's no danger, why worry? And gradually, your brain begins to believe it. Your heartbeat slows, your muscles relax, your thoughts become clearer. There are many breathing techniques. One of the simplest is 4-7-8 breathing. You inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 7, exhale for a count of 8. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system, your relaxation and recovery system. Another method is simply focusing on your breathing. You close your eyes and watch the air move in and out, slowly, calmly. Your mind may wander, and that's okay. When you notice it wandering, you simply gently bring it back to your breathing. It's called meditation, and science has shown that regular meditation actually changes the brain. It increases gray matter volume in areas associated with emotional regulation. It reduces activity in the amygdala, the part that generates fear. The second is physical activity. When you're depressed, you don't want to move. You feel like you have no energy, that your body is too heavy, that everything is too difficult. But it's a trap, because the less you move, the worse you feel, because movement is medicine. I'm not saying you need to run a marathon. I'm talking about a short walk, 10 minutes of yoga, dancing to your favorite song in the kitchen. Because when you move, your body releases endorphins, chemicals that make you feel happier. It's not just a saying, it's science.
And it's not just endorphins. Movement also increases levels of dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, all of these substances whose levels drop during depression. The third is sleep. Depression and anxiety disrupt sleep, and poor sleep makes depression and anxiety worse. It's a cycle, and you need to break it. There are many things you can do to sleep better. Avoid looking at screens an hour before bed. Keep your bedroom cool. Go to bed at the same time every night. Avoid drinking coffee after noon. But there are also cognitive techniques. If you're lying in bed and your mind can't stop working, try something called cognitive overload. Try counting backwards from 300 by 3. Try imagining a very difficult passage and mentally retracing it. Force your mind to work so hard on something else that it forgets to worry. The fourth is social interaction. Depression makes you socially withdrawn. You don't want to see people. You think you're bad company, that people would be happier without you. But that's the lie depression tells you. Because humans are social creatures. We need connection. We need intimacy. We need love. Even when you're depressed, even when you don't feel like it, even when it seems impossible, try to connect with someone. Text a friend, call your mom, cat sit. Even a short moment of contact can help. Fifth is nutrition.
Food isn't just fuel, it's information you send to your body and brain. And some foods are better for your mood than others. High sugar foods give you a short-term energy boost, followed by a crash. Foods high in processed chemicals can worsen inflammation in your brain. But fish, rich in omega-3 fatty acids, can help. Vegetables and fruits are rich in antioxidants. Whole grains provide stable energy. This doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It means that every food choice is an opportunity to help yourself a little, or hurt yourself a little. The sixth is creativity and expression. When you're anxious, your body is filled with energy that needs to be released. If you let it build up, it only gets stronger. When you're depressed, you're cut off from your emotions. You can't feel them. But you can express them, even if you don't feel them. Write, draw, sing, dance, make a video, create something, whatever. Because the act of creation is an act of life. It's a way of saying to the universe, I exist.
Cognitive behavioral therapy. Now let's talk about the treatment method that seems to work best, at least for anxiety. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy. The idea is very simple. Your thoughts influence your feelings. Your feelings influence your behavior. And if you can change your thoughts, you can change your feelings and behavior. This doesn't mean you should just think positively. It doesn't mean you should ignore problems and pretend everything is fine. This means you're learning to see your thoughts more clearly. You're learning to question them. You're learning to see distortions. Imagine you made a mistake at work, and you start to think, I'm a complete idiot. Nobody respects me. I'm going to get fired. It's a thinking spiral. One mistake leads to a whole cascade of negative thoughts. CBT teaches you to stop this spiral. You tell yourself, wait, I made a mistake. It's unpleasant. But that doesn't mean I'm an idiot. Smart people make mistakes every day. My boss pointed this out to me, which means she trusts me enough to help me improve. The likelihood of me getting fired for one mistake is very low. This isn't positive thinking, which denies reality. It's realistic thinking, which sees the whole picture. CBT also works with behavior, because sometimes it's behavior that needs to change first and emotions will follow. For example, if you're depressed and don't want to leave the house, CBT might suggest you simply leave the house, not because you want to, not because you'll enjoy it, but because it's a step in the right direction. Research has shown that people who do something, even if they don't want to, end up feeling better. This is because behavior changes thoughts. If you socially avoid people because you think you're boring, and then you go out and see someone and you're not boring, you've collected evidence that contradicts your belief. This is called behavioral exposure. You expose yourself to a situation you've been avoiding and see that the terrible thing doesn't happen. CBT is helpful for anxiety because anxiety thrives on avoidance. Anxiety says, avoid this, it's dangerous. And when you avoid, the anxiety is confirmed. But when you don't avoid, when you do what you fear, anxiety begins to lose its grip. It's a long process. It requires repetition, but it works. Psychotherapy and human connection. But all of this, the medications, the breathing techniques, the cognitive distortions, all of this only becomes real when there's another person. A person who listens, who understands, who helps you see what you can't see on your own. It's called psychotherapy, or counseling, or simply talking to someone who is trained to help you. There are many types of psychotherapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy, which I mentioned, psychodynamic therapy, which explores your past, humanistic therapy, which focuses on your growth and self-realization, acceptance and commitment therapy, which teaches you to live with your anxiety rather than try to erase it. And it doesn't matter which type you choose, because research has shown that the most important factor in the success of psychotherapy is the relationship between therapist and client. If you trust your therapist, if you feel they understand you, if you feel it's a safe place where you can be yourself, then psychotherapy will work.
But if you don't trust, if you feel like your therapist isn't listening, if you feel judged, then psychotherapy can be helpful, but it won't be as effective. Therefore, finding the right therapist can be as important as finding the right medication. During psychotherapy, you talk about yourself, about your life, about your problems. The therapist listens. Sometimes the therapist asks questions. Sometimes the therapist suggests new ways of thinking. Sometimes the therapist simply lets you know you're heard and seen. And this can be very powerful, because often people with depression or anxiety feel very alone. They feel like no one understands them, that they're in this alone. And when does someone really listen? When does someone validate your feelings? When someone says, yes, it makes sense that you feel this way, that can be the first step toward healing.
The path to the stars. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Remember how I said you are a fragment of the universe? That the atoms in your body were born in the hearts of stars? It's literally true. When stars are born, they pull hydrogen and helium from space and begin compressing them in their cores. This creates heavier elements: carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, silicon, iron. And when stars die, they explode, scattering these elements across space. These elements combine. They form planets. They form life. You are stardust. You are the memory of a stellar explosion that happened billions of years ago. And that matters because it means you're part of something big, something ancient, something beautiful. When you're depressed, when you think you're worthless, remember this. Remember that you created the universe. Remember that the atoms in your body survived the explosions of stars, the formation of planets, the emergence of life. This is by no means insignificant. Now, let's talk about what healing looks like. Healing doesn't mean you'll never feel anxious again. Healing doesn't mean you'll never feel sad again. Because anxiety and sadness are normal human emotions.
Healing means developing a relationship with these emotions. You learn to see them. You learn to accept them. You learn to not let them define you. When anxiety comes, you don't fear it. You don't try to suppress it. You say, "Hello, anxiety. I know you're here. What are you trying to tell me?" Because anxiety isn't an enemy. It's a messenger. It's a part of you trying to protect you from pain. When sadness comes, you don't try to avoid it. You give it space. You allow it to be. Because sadness is also a messenger. It's your body's way of telling you that something is important to you. And as you develop these relationships, anxiety and sadness lose their edge. They simply become part of your life, like clouds in the sky. Clouds come and go, but the sky remains. This is called acceptance, and it doesn't mean giving in. It means acknowledging reality as it is. The long road. Healing from anxiety and depression isn't a shortcut. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a month. Sometimes it takes months, sometimes years. And that's okay, because you're not just treating a disease. You're retraining your brain. You're creating new neural pathways. You're learning new ways of thinking and being. It's like learning to walk in a new country where all the roads are different. At first, it seems very difficult. You get lost. You stumble. You long to return to familiar ground. But gradually, you memorize the roads. You recognize the landmarks. You begin to move more confidently. And one day, you realize that you no longer think about directions. You just walk. You just live. The same thing happens with healing from anxiety and depression. But there are also moments of regression. Days when it feels like you're back to square one. Days when anxiety seems as intense as it was at its worst. Days when depression seems just as deep. And that's also normal, because healing isn't linear. It's a wavy line. It rises, then falls, then rises again. It's important to remember that one bad day doesn't mean you're not making progress. One bad day is just one bad day. Reflections on meaning.
Let's go back to space for another minute. Did you know that space is expanding? That all the galaxies are moving away from each other? That one day, trillions upon trillions of years from now, the universe will be so empty that there will be only cold and darkness. It's called the Great Death, the end of everything. And when you think about it, when you really consider the scale of time and space, it can be very sad. It can be very terrifying. But many people with depression and anxiety have something in common. They are often highly intelligent. They are often highly sensitive. They are often able to see reality with greater clarity than most people. And sometimes this clarity can be a curse, because they see the fragility of life. They see the pain in the world. They see death.
But it can also be a blessing, because when you see death, when you truly understand that your time is limited, life becomes more precious. Every day becomes a gift. Every moment becomes a treasure. Every human connection becomes sacred. Depressed people often find meaning in the simplest things as they begin to heal. Hot cocoa, a friend's smile, a sunset. Because they know these things don't last forever. They know life is short. This doesn't mean depression is good. It doesn't mean you should be grateful for having gone through it. Depression is still bad. It's still sick. It still hurts people. But if you've been through it and survived it, you've learned something important. You've learned that life is fragile. You've learned that joy is precious. You've learned that you're stronger than you thought.
Connecting with others. Let's talk about one more important point: how anxiety and depression affect relationships. When you're anxious, you can become very demanding. You may constantly seek validation. You may be overly sensitive to criticism. People around you may feel like you're walking on thin ice. When you're depressed, you may pull people away. You may stop responding to messages. You may decline invitations. People around you may feel rejected. And this can create a cycle of loneliness that makes depression worse. But here's what's important to know. People who love you want to be around you, even when you're down, even when you're demanding or distant. And if you can tell them what's going on, if you can explain to them that it's not about them, it's about your condition, they'll be able to understand better. I know people who have told their loved ones, "When I'm anxious, I'll be wrong. I'll be jealous. I'll be a validation seeker. That's not you, that's me. And you don't need to fix it. You just need to be here." And that changed their relationship, because the surprise was gone. It was clear what was happening.
Questions to ask yourself. If you're reading this and think you might have anxiety or depression, there are some questions you can ask yourself. They're not diagnoses. They don't replace a professional opinion, but they can help you see more clearly what's going on. How long has this been going on? If you've had symptoms for more than 2 weeks, it could be more serious than just a bad day. How much does this affect your life? Does it affect your ability to work, study, socialize, sleep, or eat? Are you having thoughts of harming yourself or others? This is a serious sign that you need immediate help. Is there a history of depression or anxiety in your family? This may indicate a genetic predisposition. Has anything traumatic or stressful happened recently? Sometimes anxiety and depression have an obvious trigger. If you answered yes to several of these questions, it's time to seek help. And not yet, now.
If you've decided you need help, what next? The first thing is to talk to your primary care physician. Tell them about your symptoms. Tell them how long they've been going on. Tell them how they're affecting your life. Your doctor may refer you to a psychiatrist who can prescribe medication, or they may refer you to a psychologist who can offer psychotherapy. If you don't have a doctor or are in crisis, you can call the Lifeline. Different countries have different numbers, but they're all dedicated to helping people in crisis. If you are in danger of harming yourself, call emergency services.
There are also many online resources, websites with information, forums where people with similar problems can communicate, and apps for meditation and anxiety management. But be careful, not all resources are created equal. Look for evidence-based resources. Look for resources from reputable organizations. And remember, the internet is no substitute for professional help. The internet can be a good first step, but it's not enough on its own.
Life after healing. When you begin to heal, life doesn't suddenly become perfect. The problems that were there before are still there. Work may still be stressful. Relationships may still be difficult. Finances may still be strained. But what has changed is your attitude toward these problems and your ability to cope with them. Now that you're anxious, you know it will pass. You know techniques to cope with it. Now that you're sad, you know it doesn't mean you're depressed. Sadness is a normal emotion. It will come and go. Now you know yourself better. You know your triggers. You know your coping techniques. You know when you need help. And it's powerful.
Darkness and light. Let's go back to space for another minute. Most of space is empty. Most of it is darkness. Terrible, cold darkness. But in this darkness, there are stars and galaxies and planets and life. Life arose in this hostile, empty universe. Life found a way to exist. Life found a way to thrive. And you are part of this miracle. You are the universe's way of learning about itself. When you're in the darkness of depression, when it seems like there's no light left, remember this. Remember that darkness isn't the opposite of life. Darkness is the context in which life exists. And even the smallest firefly can illuminate the boundless darkness.
Awakening. I want you to do something now. I want you to go back to your room. Go back to your body. Wiggle your fingers. Wiggle your toes. Feel the weight of your body in the chair or on the bed. Listen to the sounds around you. Maybe you hear someone breathing in the house. Maybe you hear the sound of cars outside. Maybe you hear silence. Open your eyes if they're closed. Look around. Notice the colors, the shapes, the light falling on surfaces. You're back. You're here. You're alive. And if anything I said resonated with you, if any of it felt true, remember that. Remember that anxiety is not an enemy to be destroyed.
Remember that depression is not the absence of something, but the presence of something else. Remember that healing is possible. Remember that you are stronger than you think. Remember that you are worth helping. Remember that you are not alone. And remember that life, even when it is difficult, even when it is painful, is a miracle. You are a miracle. Stardust that woke up and started thinking about itself. A universe aware of its own existence. And it matters. Breathe slowly. Allow yourself to relax. And know that you are safe.